Scott appears on the
Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. Nice way to lean into it, you assholes. Tonight's episode brought to you by our Patreons. If you want to become one of the supporters, join us on patreon.com, Savage Worlds GM podcast. Subscribe there and get early access to the show and Green Room and other perks. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Savage Worlds GM podcast on Facebook on Twitter, and facebook.com/Savage Worlds GM podcast. Follow us on iTunes store, Savage Worlds GM podcast. And the show is now being syndicated in RSS feed wherever you get your podcasts, be it Podbean, Google Play, iTunes. We're not yet on Stitcher, but I think we're on Spotify as well. So check it out. And then lastly, but not least, we are check out the YouTube channel, Savage Worlds Game Master Podcast. And if you're watching the live stream, feel free to participate in that chat. We do bring that into the show. Tonight's topic, Magic Man. We're going to talk about Arcane Backgrounds in the new SWADE version of Savage Worlds. Here to discuss it, our guest host, returning, Scott W., the Savage Cheerleader. Dustin, the Savage Zealot Smith.
Life finds a way.
Dave, the Rules Maven Scott.
I am Jared's malignant need for a mute button.
Oh, damn.
And Chris, the Discord Master, Savage Mommy Fox.
Oh, fuck yeah. Woo!
All right, so let's go ahead and start up the conversation, gentlemen. So, I'm sorry, what?
No, nothing.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I think someone's YouTube kicked through.
Fuck you. No, it didn't. Now you don't get any money. I'm sorry.
Oh, demonetized. Every time Scott shows his fucking face.
I've seen your viewer number.
All right. So this is really there's a lot of chatter on the official Savage Worlds Facebook regarding weird science. Particularly, we're going to really talk about all arcane backgrounds, some of the major changes to the rules in SWADE, but we're also going to especially drill down a little bit on weird science tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dave, being the Rules Maven Scott, why don't you kick off our conversation, Davey?
So, sooner or later, Jared's going to realize it takes me time to read and digest at the level. They don't expect me to know these rules.
Put it under your pillow and learn it by osmosis.
So I think the biggest things that stand out to people right now when it comes to the powers are going to be very easy to spot. It's going to be the complete lack of the old superpowers, which was kind of that low, like, single power superhero. You know, you're not going to be playing the Shadow and things like that without now going back and actually getting out the superpowers companion, or shifting and using the new gifted arcane background that's been added. And then obviously there's been some pretty heavy changes, especially to weird science. The addition of the whole new arcane devices mechanic, which is rather interesting. And then as you drill down and take a look, there's actually some new powers and some powers that got shifted and merged together. We see some things like the light and darkness power now has a alternate for sound. We now see, like, quickness really only affects speed, but then under the power modifiers, it has the ability to reduce your multi-action penalty. It completely gets rid of that ability to get an entire another free turn or a free round of action each turn. So there's a lot of extras that have been kind of rolled into this that I think are going to take a while for the Savages to digest, because there's a lot of subtle changes, but they run pretty deep.
Yep. I think, it wasn't one of the biggest changes I think people were talking about is that other people can't use your weird scientists' devices anymore. Because
for weird science specifically, that was one of the big ones, and that actually just came out from the playtesting they did out there with you guys at Genghis.
Yep.
That was something that came out of that con experience for Shane and the guys, is they saw something happen there, and I believe, and again, this is anecdotal, that what it was is they sat in on a game where the weird science devices were trumping arcane devices. And you end up with this thing where they wanted to separate those two things and give each one kind of their own core thing that felt like it belonged, this belongs specifically to weird science, this belongs specifically to arcane devices.
I kind of feel like arcane devices have become what weird science devices were, like especially with the Artificer Edge. It seems like it's just made it generic for everybody. You know what I mean?
So I think I see where you're trying to go with that, and I would take it a step further and say everyone used to say the best version of magic items was weird science, and I think the folks at PEG just said, well, if that's what they want for magic items, here's an official full set of rules for magic items as separate items that your characters can create that don't work the same way weird science does. And I think that's where we even see the PowerPoint changes that just happened to weird science are to bring it in line with that, because otherwise, what was the difference between making my weird science device and just making an arcane device that I could just hand off? If they operated the same, there was really not much reason to have a difference there. It kind of made it so that anyone who had another arcane background and took the Artificer Edge was also a weird scientist too.
Right. And it did do that. I feel like it just kind of opened it up so that everything... So the whole Artificer Edge really just feels like the Talisman Edge. In the Horror Companion, you had Talisman Crafter, where you could create the talisman, or you could imbue it with magic. I feel like that's all Artificer is now. It's the same thing. One of the things that weirds me out about what they've done is, like you said, you can't share it, but then they also changed the backlash. And so now what's the backlash? You just get a level of fatigue because of your equipment overheating, or it zaps you and you just feel it. It just doesn't, before, running around with a weird science device, you were holding a bomb counting down until you finally rolled double ones. And now it's it's sort of part of me thinks it's good. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I recently released a swag title that relies heavily on sort of a version of weird science. And I had to go back and sort of change that around because, 5.2 came out and it's actually more in line with it for me, but it doesn't feel like it's the same Edge anymore. It feels like they've gone back and just made all of them are sort of the same Edge now. It's just the difference in powers and points.
I guess where I would come down on that is weird science really kind of encapsulates a mechanic that I felt like I had done previously in other things by making some slight setting rule tweaks and whatnot. But what weird science does is it gives you that character that's got a backpack or a power cell that's running all these scientific devices. And when that runs out of juice, they can't use any of their devices. Whereas the old weird science was each device had its own power pack, and I suddenly, because I had 5 powers, I had 5 times as many power points automatically of any other arcane background person who had taken the exact same edges I took, because each of my powers had its own full complement of my complement of power points. Now it's back to this idea that I don't automatically take weird science because I get to have all the power points ever. I now run by the same rules that the other arcane backgrounds run on. And that also kind of feeds that fantasy. Whereas the Artificer gives you all those benefits of, well, I can take this item, I can imbue it with special abilities, and I can hand it to you, and you can use it, but it takes some of me with it. I have to charge that thing from my power points, and then until it's used up, I don't get those back. I can't recover them as they're used. So I think there's an interesting aspect there that really does now. Artificer feels very separate from the weird science background, and the lack of backlash, I think, just brings all of them back up to an even keel. I think what happened was weird science did all these extra things, like you could hand your powers to somebody else to use. Hence, now we get a ladle of backlash as kind of a counterpoint. Now that you don't have that benefit, you don't need the counterpoint to it.
So, yeah, by the rules as written, no one can use your device. However, there is a caveat in there, right? For creative folks, there's the jury rig caveat, where if you could explain it away, be like, oh, I hypercharge this so it gets off one good shot or some shit, you could technically, you could use that as an excuse to allow someone to grab that bolt lightning gun and use it for that one time or something, you know.
To a certain extent, but isn't jury rig specifically for using a power you don't currently have?
Jury rig is for using your weird science stuff if it's not at hand, because you have to have your gadgets at hand in order to use them to power up. But if you don't, it's you must use activate your powers through their assigned device. But you can improvise other ways, reduce it at a -2 penalty, and it requires a rationale for the setting and the DM's permission. And they give a little example. They basically, you're in a cell and your shit's across the room. How do you manifest a blast in like your grenade belt, right? So I mean, it's one way of doing it. Is it? I think it's not really. I'd like to say it's not cheating. It's more of people who are like, hey, you know, let's have a kind of back to the old. I remember the old ways. But
well, you can also accomplish it.
I want to go back to the old ways.
You know, I mean,
I don't like the new shaken. I want to go back to the old ways.
Oh, sure, Chris.
Oh, you did
no,
not.
Chris, not shaken.
Really? Oh, jeez.
Gauntlet is thrown.
Everybody,
even I let that go.
Everybody
Even I
in
let
their
that go.
fucking old ways.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those things, though. I mean, if Pinnacle didn't think it was viable, they wouldn't have put the out in there. And it may not have been their intention. Their intention in that example is quite clear. But if there are those people who just can't let go, I mean, fuck it, you know.
I do kind of like the new weird science. It's just, I'm going to point out that it is sort of not unique anymore. It was unique. You were walking around with a bomb. You could max out your powers. You could just blow yourself and whoever's around you to hell and back. And now it's kind of like, well, it's a lot safer to use.
Well, that's just the backlash issue, though, right? I mean, that's a setting rule, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, almost everyone who played Weird Science always took the Gadgeteer.
Right.
A lot of characters. And now with the Artificer, I mean, Peg did a really good job with that. They not bent the knee, it sounds terrible, but they made it really easy for like people like me and Christian to run Eberron, right? Because now we have a very cool version of an Artificer. It doesn't require a separate arcane background or anything. I use arcane background magic, and I have the Artificer, and boom, voila, here it is. Now I'm pumping out potions and boosts and whatnot for my team. And if you combine all three of those things, you know, those two with the weird science, I think you have a very interesting weird scientist that essentially can do what most people want the weird scientist to do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's a lot more open. Do you guys feel, I think the backlash that's coming, do you see what I did there? From the community is the fact that it seems nerfed without having the backlash results table.
Well, I mean,
but based on what Dave was saying earlier too, that was kind of a mechanic in there to balance out the fact that, oh, I've got 20 power points in this bolt gun, 20 power points in this device. By the time you get to legendary and you've bought what, you're walking around with a freaking magic arsenal, and everybody else is like counting their power points and, you know, praying, oh, please God, let this work. I mean,
yeah,
it's
there was a hack that you could do where if you were playing Born of Hero, you could get like a marksman or some other type character, and you could get sidekick weirds. You could get the sidekick, and they could be a weird scientist with power points or new powers, and they could just make devices in hand to you.
Yeah,
it was pretty. It was pretty. You would load them out with weird science, notice, healing, and repair, and you could probably give them arcane background, weird science, and then gadgeteer, and then whenever it's time to level them up, you just level up with new power, more power points, and they could definitely give you some cool stuff. Like you could be Bond and they could be Q.
Well, I think this is I think the reaction to the changes to Weird Science are very much like the reactions to what do you mean there's no more charisma as a stat. I understand the knee-jerk reaction to it, but the thing that it like the charisma, the fact that it's now drilled down and specialized and isolated into its own diverse edges makes the use of that social character way better than just a flat charisma bonus.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something, guys. One of the things I'm glad that they added is limitations. I feel like with adding like the modifiers and the limitations so that now you can actually like really flesh out your powers. Yeah. You can actually, you can reduce the cost by changing some of the benefit to the powers. Like, I don't know, you guys ever seen, what is it? Channing Tatum, it's Jupiter Ascending, right?
Yeah.
So you remember how he had like the boots? That's like the fly power without climb. So he could move at the pace, he just couldn't go up. So now you could actually create that guy by giving him Weird Science, fly, limitation, no climb, and deflection. Voila.
So just to clarify something here, I do want to point out the malfunction table, yes, that was removed, but it was added to the entirety of the dynamic backlash mechanic. Yeah. And now you can apply that to an individual arcane background in your campaign or to all arcane backgrounds as you see fit, because it's a setting rule. You can apply that as you as the GM see fit, whether that's on specific arcane backgrounds or on all of them. So you could very easily put that back if that matters to you.
Sure.
Now, Eric, he, him, Izel asks in chat, so do we think that it's better balanced now or less so because you don't have as much of a bomb waiting for you with that Snake Eyes roll? And then he continues the question to ask, and if they can't use the device by handing it off to another party member, does that make it less group-oriented? And I think, at least to me, I think it is more balanced because you don't have one arcane background that suddenly needs this extra ladle of balance because it's got this extra ladle of power. But at the same time, I think the group-oriented thing, I think it's more group-oriented because now there's just this artificer edge. You don't have to be you have arcane background.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. You can take the artificer edge and you can create shit to your little heart's content and give it to whoever you want, and it's not tied to that arcane background. That arcane background, you are the weird scientist. You are making these devices for you to use.
Yeah, it's
not everyone else.
Yeah.
The idea that the only arcane background that ever should have been able to make items that could be handed off to another party member being Weird Science felt a little odd, and we saw it get kind of hand-wavy with some campaigns. You'd see GMs kind of twisting that or retrapping arcane background Weird Science to work more like traditional Magic to get in, like the wand was always the focus, the item that everything went through, and that way you could hand your wand off to somebody else and it would be effective. We saw a lot of that in the community. Now it's just boiled down to, here's an edge. If you have any arcane background, make the item with this edge, and they can hand it off. You don't have to have this specific one.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and it is seasoned, so I mean, you can't do it right away, but that's something that you have to build your character up to.
Yeah,
it's called character development. Oh my God, you don't want to have that.
No, I want an I win button.
Exactly.
Well, I see the point of the question, right? Is like, is it more balanced? I guess from that point of view that you're not going to accidentally fuck your party up. But I mean, some of the coolest things I've run was when the psychic has that psychic backlash. It doesn't affect them. But, I mean, It's interesting because it creates there's that level of if used correctly and with a good GM and good players, there's that je ne sais quoi about like, what do you mean you're a fucking psychic? Hold on a minute, like, dude, stop using your powers. You're dicking around right now, and you've already knocked the entire party down at one point. And it kind of makes some interesting conversation. You can make a very dangerous, game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I don't know if you guys have ever played Dark Heresy, but you do not want to play a Psyker in Dark Heresy. Like a botched roll, you just summon a demon. Like, you kill the whole planet on a botched roll. I'm like, don't play a Psyker.
Right, yeah.
And the little bit of Dark Heresy we played, somebody played a Psyker and bad things happened. But I kind of agree with what Scott said. It made it kind of interesting.
Isn't that, though, covered fairly well mechanically from the dynamic backlash? And quite frankly, I mean, it sounds to me like what you guys are bitching about is that not enough creative stuff happens at your table that the rules make happen under this rule.
Dark Heresy.
So in other words, the heavy lifting is back on the players and GM.
Yeah.
Make the creative thing happen. Yeah. You're not, every time someone rolls a 1, automatically creativity occurs from a table.
So let me ask a question of everyone here. Now, I know Jared runs his fucking Walking Dead game, right? Whatever. You run a zombie game, right?
He does.
Is anyone actually using SWADE to run a fantasy game or science fiction game that has Arcane Backgrounds in it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I'm running Deadlands. I'm running Deadlands, and I've let people use the new SWADE powers if they want, and the modifiers.
Okay, so that's what I was curious about, right? Because the modifiers all come from that really cool article that Clint did at one point about when he did the like the ad hoc sorceress casting, right? And he was like, here's how I would do it. And it's essentially what that is. And it was really fucking cool. Chris, how has that slowed down the game at all? Or are people able to like rapidly kind of calculate what they want to do?
I haven't been having any issues with it. I think it's a little bit of a learning curve. I mean, what I've been doing is making, having people jot down what the modifiers are. But now with the new power cards that are coming out, that, I mean, if you backed it, you should have got them in a PDF.
Yeah.
You just print those power cards out. They've got the modifiers right on the bottom. You just hand those to your players. Boom, there you go.
Cool. So that's cool. Because I was looking, you look at some of the modifiers. They're the nerds who will plan out the spells, and then there are the people who will do what Dave said and be like, I don't know, I'm going to use bolt. Well, what do you want to do? It's a long way. I guess I'll extend the range. I guess I'll go into the target.
And I think that the interesting aspect with things like the power cards specifically is that they're gonna bring an aspect of the new rules to the table for people. Right now, I think there's a lot of concern, and we've even talked about this before about how it's going to slow the game down with all these new things, the new statuses, the new stun ability, the different power modifiers, and the fact that there's common power modifiers and unique power modifiers that are specific to that specific power. And there's all these things that you kind of have to be able to keep up with at the table now. But I think what we're going to see is it's going to make some of these tools a lot more useful. Things like the GM screen, the player handouts, the power cards. And Peg's kind of doubling down, and like all of those things are immediately available if you back the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
if you're waiting to buy the physical stuff, by the time the book is in store, so will all the physical stuff be.
Yeah. So
it's definitely something that I think you can take advantage of the fact that core rules don't cost you $75 and to buy all the add-ons so that you've got them at the table, because you're going to find them very useful.
True statement. So, Chris, I got one other question for you, just because you're the one running like a Deadlands game, right? Well, that's just for Jared too, since he's running something, and the rest of us are slackers. But I also know the difference in your styles, right? Chris is very like by the book, right? I mean, I know. I mean, Chris, it's not a knock. I mean, it's how Chris is. He's knowledgeable. He's knowledgeable. And he's articulate in the rules and how they work and function. And so, Chris, do you think that SWADE is allowing you to sort of deviate from that, or do you feel more flexibility, faster kind of off the cuff sort of running? Or
I would say that, I'm still running the plot points, but I think I do kind of think things are a little bit quicker and easier for me. I love the new statuses. I have found my players and really letting them know about distracted and vulnerable and how those can work together, and they've started using that against me, and I think that really
nice
kind of helps bring that table together, more teamwork. I would say I'm looking up things every once in a while, but for the most part, I feel like I've got a fairly good grasp on most of the new stuff, and can run with it. But there's still going to be things I can look up, and I think the whole power issue, I'm going to lay that on the players. I'm not going to try to take that on my plate, because that's something that's their character. I shouldn't, I need to know basically what the powers can do, but if they don't know what their powers do and they want to sit there and look them up, then just go on hold, look up your power, and then let me know when you're ready to go.
Chris, now I got to make an agility test to get back into the game, Chris.
That goes back to that old Shane rule of countdown from 5. And you're ready.
Right, yeah.
You're on hold and we're moving on.
He did that to a couple people in one of the games we played at Genghis, and one of the guys just kind of stopped and looked at him. Like, what are you doing? And he's like counting down, and he get to like 2, and the guy's like, "Oh, okay, I'll do this."
I'm gonna just throw something here. I'm just gonna backtrack just a second. I know we're talking a lot. We're using the term balance a lot, and it's not necessarily incorrect. I think maybe a better term is diversified.
Yeah,
because now everything is sort of sub-layered. Gives you more diversity. You have more variety and more tools to use when it comes to things. I don't know that balanced is necessarily the right term.
So have you found, because we used to have a lot of the shows, you go back and we kind of poke fun at the rule set. Have you found anything as egregious as some of the shit we used to poke holes in?
Not so far.
Cool.
Yeah.
I grimaced a little bit with the grapple rules when we first started. Like, oh, come on. It used to be a simple, opposed fighting rule, done. And I'm like, that was super simple. The new grapple rules really work. They work really well. And once you kind of grok and grasp the stages that's happening in stages, it makes perfect sense.
But it took you a little bit of time to grapple with them to get them figured out.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
It took running a few, I would say probably about 4 or 5 actual grappling sessions, and it is a slowdown at the table. It's part of the learning curve. We're going, hold on a second. So if you do this, then you're then it works like this. Okay.
And to be fair, the slowdown was never the rule made the game slower. It was always and everyone has to re-understand how it's going to work that made it slower. Yeah. It wasn't that the rule actually is any slower in actual use.
As far as his role,
yeah, but it's a lot of unlearning. If we're right now, I'm so conditioned with the deluxe core rule sets,
right? But really, I think it's like you said, it's getting in that, just making that little switch, because all it is now is instead of an opposed fighting, it's opposed athletics, and then you can be entangled or bound.
So success does what versus a raise does what. Having to look up which version, like entangle or bound, is on which one of those, and
right
of the statuses does that trickle down? Is that the one that comes with just distracted, or is that the one that's distracted and vulnerable?
Sure.
There's a lot of that aspect that I think is what's slowing it down right now for the group, because I'm watching all of Jared's Friday night games because I'm kind of the rules guy for Dead End. So while he's running it and focused on being a good GM, I'm kind of sitting there as the designer going, oh, well, that didn't work the way we designed it.
Well, and here's the thing, too. I mean, here's the thing you're leaving out of that conversation, Chris. It's a little bit of an oversimplification, too, right? Because now I have all kinds of new options as the attacker versus defender. If I let's say I grapple you and I'm successful, but I only entangled you, then on my next roll, I have to get you in a bound status. So I'm making another essentially grappling roll.
You have the
opposed
option.
by strength. I have the option.
Yeah.
I have the option.
Now with the whole 3-action cap, you also have that thing of now the player has to decide, am I announcing grapple, choke, grapple, grapple, choke, grapple, in case I, fail the first one, I have 2 more bites at the apple to get you, fully wrapped up this turn.
Yeah. Grapple apple.
You have a lot more kind of mutators that go into the whole, because you're dealing with something that has a variable response at the end of it. Now it's harder to declare that action, because we all had that problem with Deluxe where you'd get the guy who goes, well, I'm going to push him prone, and then I'm going to curb stomp him, and then I'm going to call his mother a goat. And they failed on the push prone, so they couldn't curb stomp the guy because they had declared this specific action that was dependent on a previous action being successful. Now with a 3-action cap and a variable response from the action, it's not just a pass-fail. You either yes, you pushed him down, or no, you didn't. Now it's you grappled him, but you only got him, wrapped up. You didn't get him fully bound. So you have that extra layer. So you have players who are stopping and going, well, I'll spend 2 actions grappling this turn and 1 choking if I get them grappled.
Right, and that's before you remind the person who's doing the grappling, oh, while you're grappling him, you're completely vulnerable, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Hold on, shit, I am vulnerable. Damn. I mean, there's a lot of subtlety it's almost a thing of like having too many options. You can become pretty easily overwhelmed with the new grappling rules just because of you have so many options.
Yeah, a little bit. I think people need to put it in their head of like, don't think of grappling as fucking WWF. Think of grappling as no shit high school or collegiate wrestling where you get into a position and you're both done because now person A is holding someone and to make them so fucking mad they're going to tap out and lose control and exhaust themselves, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
To go back to Scott's question about like, is there anything that I would poke a hole in like we used to in regards specifically to powers, I would say I personally don't see a use at all for Arcane Background Miracles currently. In the current form it exists in the book, it is identical in every mechanical way to Arcane Background Magic, except that it has some flavor text that says your character might want to take like Code of Honor or something to dictate the religious aspect of this. And then it has the exact same number of powers, the exact same number of power points. It just triggers off of a different derived stat or a different
backlash on miracles was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole religious aspect of miracles, where if your character committed a sin, they started losing their ability to do their powers as effectively. Well, that was amazing. And
to be fair, just because I rolled fucking 2 1s doesn't mean I suddenly made an egregious sin and now God is punishing.
Well, no, it was, and that was the thing, is it didn't depend on how well you used the power. You could roll 1s all day long and it never backlashed in Deluxe. What it was is if your character was a holier than thou, paladin, and then broke their vows, they started to have to atone to be able to continue to use their powers.
I don't think that's accurate. The backlash was part of a roll.
No, he's accurate.
Deadlands. Yeah, Deadlands. It would drop your skill. Okay, so
Deadlands,
they had 3 different versions, maybe 4. They just changed it every time a new.
Yeah, you had Deadlands had what, Shaman and the Blessed.
Yeah, so Deadlands is what I'm thinking of because that's what I would use for. I weaken as you start to lose confidence in you. But even then, again, that was just kind of a bullshit excuse because it's like, come on, man. I get it, but whatever.
I think that goes to what Jared had said before about diversification. This is where I don't consider the current version of the rules overly diverse when we get specifically to this chapter. I don't find the different arcane backgrounds mechanically interesting.
No, I agree with you. I think really, yeah. I mean, take arcane background magic and you can play the druid, right? You don't need to have the miracle.
Other than arcane background weird science, where you have a device is your trigger point. Tell me the difference mechanically between any of the other arcane backgrounds other than the base stat that the skill is linked to.
True. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could do setting rules, right? That says, hey, here's, how these things function, and miracles only can have these powers, but which is this the antithesis of Savage World, because it's not a bolt of a holy order is not the same as a bolt of a mage and all that shit. So.
Well, and I don't think that belongs in the core rules. I honestly think that where that belongs is in a setting book. If I release a setting and in my setting I have, shamanism, and it only has access to powers that you could very easily nature trap, and it has no powers that make no sense otherwise, then I have an in-game, in-setting reason for that narrowing. As far as the core rules, I don't want to see miracles say, well, it can't ever do damage spells.
Yeah, exactly.
This or that. What I want to see is some unique mechanic that miracles gets that the other ones don't. Just like I want psionics. Like, there was a version of the rules, I want to say 4.1, shortly after the Kickstarter funded, where Arcane Background Psionics had the specific ability that you didn't have to have your hands free to use a power.
Cool.
And they stripped that out in one of the change logs. And that was what made Psionics a unique arcane background in SWADE. Now, Psionics is, I get 3 powers and 10 power points. Oh, wait, Arcane Background Magic is I get 3 powers and 10 power points. Oh, wait, Arcane Background Miracles is I get 3 powers and 10 power points.
Yeah.
There's no mechanical difference between them, and they're not unique.
No. And what is range on all the power? On almost every power, right? Certainly.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. The powers don't even. It's not even based on if I took gifted, it's not range is double my focus. No, range is always going to be smarts or spirit. It's always going to be based on those other stats. It doesn't matter if you can have every single arcane background represented in your game. All of them have the exact same power. They'll all have different ranges based on their core stats.
So do you think they tried here? So let me ask this question. So I think maybe the design idea behind it in Deluxe was, let's capture powers or spells or magic from multiple genres in unique ways. But now we're treating it in SWADE as, well, let's restructure arcane backgrounds to work just like skills and edges, where they're adaptable for anybody to take them. And we're kind of leveling them all out to where they're all the same. Essentially, do you think that's the reason we're seeing that in SWADE? I mean,
I think there was a balanced consideration to make sure that nothing felt like it got more powers or more power points by default. I think that was a big part of that. And then I think the second half of it was when they removed the way backlash worked and made a flat backlash rule and a flat backlash setting rule. And backlash wasn't specific to the arcane background any longer. That's where we lost all of the mechanical diversity.
The flavor.
And they just forgot to go back and look for some form of mechanical diversity. Like, how cool would it be if instead miracles were only ritual castings?
Oh, that's interesting.
So now all of a sudden you've got an arcane background in the core book that basically can't be used in combat unless you're being protected for multiple rounds by your fellow players, because you take these ritualistic castings.
But aside from that,
I would hate that
aspect of that. Why would you do that?
Why would you do it? Just to offer the same reason you do anything else in Savage Worlds. We're trying to offer the largest number of options for you to tell your story. I'm not saying that Miracles is better than Magic, but saying strip those names off and go Arcane Background, power user, Arcane Background empowered person,
Sure.
Arcane Background channeler, and you don't talk about Arcane Backgrounds as what I'm channeling. We don't call it magic anymore because in one game world it might be magic, in another game world it might be I'm throwing the spirits of the dead at you. It doesn't matter where the power comes from. It matters mechanically how I use it, because that's all the rules are ever supposed to care about.
Sure,
So Weird Science is a great example in that it's really Weird Science maybe even gets named to device user.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't think you could mix a setting that has ritual and any other arcane background, though, because the ritualist is going to lose out every time, and there will be diminished returns on their usability in the game, right? Just thinking from that mechanical perspective.
Well, no, I think that you could have a really interesting aspect there. Is that by default, ritual magic does 5 times the damage.
That
it has 5 times the range or 10 times the range. Like you give ritual magic right at the top under a mechanical multiplier.
An ace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, yeah. It's not a bad idea.
Ritual magic, maybe the ritual magic, their casting is always a 3-round dramatic task. To do any casting as a ritual magic user, it's automatically a 3-round cast. If you're outside of combat, maybe you have a bonus to that casting for spending time in advance setting up your ritual chamber or having other people help out. You could have made a very interesting mechanical arcane background and not worried about who or how it would get used. Remember, Savage Worlds isn't about the how are they going to use this in the game. It's about what's another interesting way we could let them play with this set of rules. And sure, you or I or another GM out there could create these more interesting arcane backgrounds. And I really do think we're going to see some interesting stuff come both from PEG as well as the licensees as we see the new iterations of Deadlands and the new iterations of other settings come out. But I really think they kind of missed the boat on a diversity of mechanic versions of arcane background in the
core rules. Yeah, I don't necessarily think I disagree either. I mean, it could be as simplified as like the ritual caster spends the power points, makes the roll, and on a raise they keep the power points.
Sure, yeah.
I think it could be something that simple, like how well they carried off the ritual, they keep their power points.
To your part of your question though, Jared, you would be hard pressed to anyone to convince me that the original Savage Worlds with the arcane backgrounds as presented in 2004, it's a response to Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they got the cleric, they got the wizard.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's that portion of it. I can't.
Yeah.
There's only so much the general public that's playing role playing games will accept too, right? I mean, you can't go, well, we're doing all this based not on where the power comes from, like Dave says, but how it's used. Okay.
Oh,
what? Where's the wizard? Dude, where's the wizard?
That's why this is still the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, let's call a spade a spade. The reason that arcane background magic wasn't removed from the book and replaced with power channeler, and the reason that arcane background psionics wasn't removed from the book, and arcane mentalist or something like that was put in. The reason those things weren't made as different, unique mechanics and completely stripped out of the book is because I need to know how to make my wizard. I need to know how to make my priest. And I know magic is my wizard. Miracles is my priest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a little bit of pandering, I guess is the right word.
You got to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
at the end of the day, PEG is in business. I mean,
absolutely.
Well, I'm going to ask you this. Which one do you go to the store to buy? Do you buy Band-Aids or adhesive bandage strips?
The cheap ones.
Yeah, the cheap
ones. But what do you call them?
Look, duct tape, if you can't fix it with duct tape, you're not using enough duct tape.
There you go. Duct tape. That's what you do. Okay.
Yeah,
so do you go Band-Aid?
I use the brand name, rub some dirt on it, and stop being a pussy.
Do you go when you go to the grocery store? Do you buy Jell-O or do you buy gelatin?
I buy gelatin because it's usually generic and cheaper.
Right. That's what I'm saying though. It's like when I tell people that I play role-playing games,
it's
like
D&D.
You have to. And I don't play D&D, but you have to because they cornered the market. That's synonymous. And I don't play D&D, but I do play Savage Worlds. So I'm like, it's like D&D. It's along those lines.
Yeah.
So
it's the bane of our hobby, right?
Well,
let me ask this. How do you guys feel about the synergy rule making it into core finally?
You know what? I really don't have a comment because I didn't play supers and I didn't give two shits, to be honest. So I kind of glossed over it when it first came out in the Superpowers Companion. I know there was a lot of praise about it, but I really don't have an opinion one way or the other.
And I don't even remember reading it.
I kind of like it. At the same time, I'm sort of like, now it almost feels like, it kind of feels like the party is becoming the same character thanks to synergy. You know what I mean? It's like we're all merging.
No, because synergy in the new SWADE is if I cast a lightning bolt, I get a chance to do extra damage, right? Because the lightning should naturally do electrical damage to like a transformer or a robot man, right? It would do a little.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think about over there? Stop smoking weed.
I'm thinking a combined attack.
Combined attacks is not the same thing. No, synergy was the idea that like your character's standing in a mud puddle and I cast lightning, and it actually hits you, goes through the mud puddle, and hits Jared as well because he's standing in the same puddle.
It's essentially what trappings used to do, right? I could lower my firebolt to a lower damage, or do this extra bit to it as part of the trappings.
I really just hate to say that as a society, we've progressed to the point where everything is so literal that we have to write a rule for something that narratively just makes sense.
Well,
that's last week's entire show, though.
Right? Yeah. So quick anecdote. When we were hanging out earlier, I told you guys I played that Mutants and Masterminds game because I wanted to see what it was like. My character was a gravity-based mutant, right? So essentially Magneto, but with gravity, because I thought that sounded cool. Well, the GM's Mary Sue, I was talking shit to her and backhanded my character, and he's like, "Oh, you're taking this extra damage because the power makes you hit Mach speed." And I'm like, "Hold on. I don't think you understand how G-forces work, and one of my powers as this mutant is I'm immune to the effects of gravity." And he's like, "Well, no, you can't. You have to still take that damage." He's like, "No, I need you to understand how fucking G-forces work and why it's called G-forces." I mean, so what we would say is common sense isn't really common.
Not that common.
They're not as smart as they think they are, which is something Scott always says.
I mean, to be fair, this to a certain extent is also the argument why common sense maybe shouldn't have been common knowledge shouldn't have been one of the core skills that everybody starts with. I think going back to common knowledge being D4 minus 2 by default might be appropriate for the players we play with.
Yeah.
Common knowledge used to be smarts. Like everybody had it at their smarts level, and we had to add common knowledge as a skill just so people would roll it.
And I don't understand why you even got to roll it because it's common knowledge. I mean, fuck it. Unless it's something obscure, right? I mean,
Well, and I mean that goes to that whole you shouldn't roll things unless it's you're under duress or a challenge. But I think the reason for common knowledge, more to answer what Dustin just said, it was less to get people to roll it and more because you took smarts at a certain die level and suddenly you knew how to do like 9 billion things at a D12 automatically. Now you actually have to pump some points into it to be able to get it that high.
Yeah.
By bumping the skill up.
I mean, my healing skill is D12. I know how to do surgery and do first aid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because my character's a medic, I get to common knowledge through all the medical practice. Yeah. So, what about shorting? Since I'm trying to keep us a little more on topic, and we are running a little short on time. Let's talk about the whole shorting aspect of the powers, where now I can go. I'm going to cast this power despite having no power points left, and I'm just going to roll a much higher activation roll.
But so I like it, but I wish they would have made the penalty not the minus. I wish they would have made like, hey, you fail this roll, you're taking the fucking damage, or you're taking 1d6 per power point you failed to utilize as personal damage. You know, you are literally going to short yourself out, and you're going to suffer a burn. I just don't think they went far enough with it. It's cool, but yeah.
Well, I mean, they did say it is considered a critical failure, so you're going to take that level of fatigue from the default backlash, or you're going to have to roll on the dynamic backlash if you're playing in Dustin's game where he feels like, you know, it needs to, overall powers need to be a bomb that you're carrying around. So I think there's an aspect of that there, but I think you're right. I don't think there's enough danger. Yeah. And I also don't like the penalty structure being the same as the no power points rule. Like that shouldn't be exactly the same mechanic as if we were playing with no power points to begin with.
Because essentially you are now playing with no power points.
So let me ask this question. So I'm playing the no power points rule and I want to short my spell.
Uh-oh.
Now what?
Uh-oh.
I don't see how you could do it.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't. That
doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. You can't do it
because I'm not spending power points.
Exactly.
So therefore, I can't short what I'm not spending.
Yeah,
exactly.
Shorting the power points is basically you're taking a penalty for every power point you're not spending to cast
right.
power.
Right.
In no power points, you're automatically taking a penalty for however many power points the power costs. So you can't short the power in a no PowerPoint setting because it has a default modifier based on how expensive it would have been.
Yeah.
You don't have the option to make it cheaper.
Yeah. It's a good question. It's a good observation. It's not across the board. But I mean, I guess if you're playing with no PowerPoints, it's sort of the understood.
All right. We have anything else in chat?
We do making us talk about stupid magic, so.
Okay, guys, what do you think about powers as multi-actions?
Oh,
I like it.
Interesting, yeah.
It scares me as a thought. Just because.
Well, why?
Like, each power activated is its own action, and the same or different power can be cast multiple times.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if I can fire the same weapon at you 3 times in a row, why can't I cast the same bolt at you 3 times in a row? Where's the danger?
It makes sense, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it makes sense. And like I said, with weird science, the changes and multi-actions would bring it in line. You can use powers as technology, and that helps it out.
Yeah.
Chris, what if I'm a wizard? We're playing a fantasy game, so let's do a thought experiment on this for a second, Dustin. We're playing in a fantasy game, and I'm a wizard. So I'm going to cast 3 fireballs in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm still suffering the multi-action penalty for doing it.
PowerPoint loss.
Yeah, PowerPoint loss.
So
you better be spending a lot. You're either in a no PowerPoint setting. You are shorting each of those powers to make it more difficult, or you're blowing your whole wad in a turn.
But can't you spend bennies to get more power points?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I can drop bennies to get more power points, right? So
yeah. Hey, Chris, do you guys have a huckster in your game?
No, we have the I can't remember the name of it. It's not a huckster. It's the one from Last Sons. Hexslinger.
A Hexslinger, yes. Have they used any of the multi-action powers or anything in the game?
Not really. No, he does a lot of, but he has quick casting, so he'll do a lot of, you know, and that, you know, that's a great point you bring up, because now I need to look at how that works, because if he can cast 3 spells in one round, you know, if we go by SWADE rules, then maybe that makes quick casting not happen or be needed any longer. So that's a valid point, you know. And I know a lot of people might say, hey, you shouldn't be using SWADE with Deadlands, wait for the new Deadlands. But I mostly I'm using, you know, I love the new the distracted, vulnerable. I love those. I love just the 3 actions around. So I think I'm using core rules that aren't making huge changes to Deadlands, but I mean, there are some things that make changes.
Sure.
You know, and I threw out, and I talked to my players, and I threw out the 3 different colored bennies for Deadlands, and I said, you know, you can do a lot more with bennies now. So, are you guys want to go with the new Benny rules? Do you want to stay with the old Benny rules? And everybody's like, I want to go with the new ones. So now bennies are bennies.
You didn't think about combining them?
I haven't. No, I didn't.
I think that's what we're going to see when I think when the official version of Deadlands for SWADE comes out, we're going to see it's a combination. It's going to take all the stuff they added in SWADE and add it to the existing multicolored Benny structure that they
Fate chips. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd have to, right? Because it's the whole shtick of Deadlands that it's a poker game, right?
I'll be interested to see if the legendary chip doesn't get some changes, because it seems a little too close to conviction.
Yeah,
It is. It's conviction, I feel like.
I don't know. I'm excited that Chris is actually running fucking something, you know, not fantasy and still has magic and shit. I want Chris to make a vlog.
I love Deadlands. I mean, Deadlands is my favorite thing to run.
I want to play Deadlands, but there's man, it's a whole different fucking show about finding players when you move to a new area. Oh my
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons. God damn you.
You know, I'm just going to say this. Don't be so determined to play at the table.
That's the problem, is like again, that's where my charisma comes into it, because you know, like John, a few of the fans have seen me at cons, and so I think those people track on like, oh, he definitely can control a fucking room on a video screen. I don't feel the same. I can't read your body language. I mean, it's no connection.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. It's hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the moment and I'm going to say, stop fucking using the tabletop simulators that are out there. Tabletop Simulator, fucking Fantasy Grounds, fucking Roll20. Throw all that shit in the trash. And if you're going to role play online, do exactly what we're doing right now. Do a video call.
Yeah.
And then you get all the body language. You get all the mannerisms. All of that translates to your game the same it would around the table.
Get to see if people are sleeping.
Skype it.
I can try it. I don't know. I need to find players too, and it's still essentially difficult to find people who want to fucking play Savage Worlds online. I don't know why. Because I have acerbic wit, and I, contrary to my fucking character on the podcast, I really do run a really good game.
Well, it could probably also have to do with the fact that, I mean, we just saw probably the most successful Kickstarter in Savage Worlds history happened.
Yeah.
And it was still only just over 10,000 backers. I mean, we are the niche of a niche hobby.
That's crazy. It was that few back. I mean, 10,000 is a lot. I do a lot, but man, I don't know. But yeah, no, Chris, man, I'm super excited. I would love to play Deadlands. I think Deadlands is a totally fucking cool setting.
It's awesome. I love it.
I'm closer to Colorado now. So I need to fucking get out there for one of your cons.
Or you come on the Savage Cruise and I'll run a Deadlands game.
Yeah, well, we talked about that off air. That way you don't air your shit if you're not ready to yet.
Mm-hmm.
Savage Cruise 2020 on Facebook. Go check it out.
God damn it, Chris. I don't want to use fucking Facebook.
God damn, shameless plugs. Listen, guys, we got rid of Pimp It. Fuck.
Shit.
Maybe we need to bring that shit back.
No.
Would you call it Savage Cruise
2020?
2020.
All right.
So Sai asked about the Alchemist, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really have
the example's already there.
I'll talk to him about it this weekend.
It's
Artificer.
Artificer and
Tinker. I
mean,
yeah, it's already there. I mean, it gives. Okay, so if you're looking at SWADE, page 153, there's a sidebar where they show an example with the character being an alchemist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's there.
I gotta be a dick. Jesus.
God, read the book.
I mean,
he's gonna kill my character this weekend if I keep being a
what
dick.
If his idea identifies motherfucker? What if he identifies different than that picture? You don't know his fucking astrological and fucking alchemical signs. It might not be Mercury, Saturn, fucking rising in the sun's apex.
Maybe he has something against a character's named Gabe and just doesn't read that shit. I don't know.
Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe and Red. Those are our mascots now.
Whatever. We're your mascots. Chris, you're killing me with this fucking pirate cruise thing. Oh, I do get it. You motherfucker. Is this how you're fucking? Is this a fucking shill for your pirate setting? Is that what this is, Chris?
No.
Do you get a free copy of the pirate setting?
He and Landauer are the ones doing it. So
Yeah.
I mean,
So they get everybody on the ship and they go, oh, now we're going to play test a new version of Buccaneers High Water. Welcome aboard, matey.
Shut up. Shut
now
up,
that we're at
guys.
sea.
Shh.
hey, stop giving away the big super secret reveal.
God, there's going to be a big surprise, and we're going to be like, we're going to get everybody on the ship and go, really, folks, sorry, but there's going to be no excursions. You know,
What you really need, Chris, what you really need is a celebrity host. I'm pretty sure you could get Kevin Sorbo pretty cheap.
True statement.
We're working on stuff. We're working on stuff.
Really? There's no shrimp at the buffet. Disappointed.
We're working on it.
All right. Well, we have nothing left. Nothing else in the chat. It's a little past-ish for the show. So, anything else you're seeing there, Dave? Anybody else? Anything in chat we want to address?
We're not supposed to kill Chris's character.
What?
No.
Chris is begging for his character not to be killed since we've insulted his friend in GM so much.
So Chris, I don't know. So fake news.
No, I'm not seeing anything else that really stands out from chat that we have to touch on.
Besides comment about the common knowledge, I think that was him. So yeah, what's common knowledge of one is not so much common knowledge of others. I assume everyone when it comes to guns, and then I see people talk about fully semi-automatic shit, and so
Semi-automatic. That's great.
Well, they all have clips, right? I know that's how much I've known from knowing Scott. So until next time, this is Jared Savage Datagunning for Scott, Dustin, Dave, and Chris saying keep rolling and stay safe.